The coat was too small, and the woman behind the counter sneered. "This ain't for girls like you," she spat, her words cutting deeper than the December wind outside. 11-year-old Emma clutched the tattered hand-me-down she'd worn for 3 winters, her cheeks burning with shame as the other kids in line whispered and stared. Emma Harper grew up in the small town of Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, where the winters were brutal and the people sometimes colder. That moment at the church's annual coat drive, where she'd been turned away for reasons she couldn't yet name, seared itself into her memory. It wasn't just the coat she'd been denied, it was dignity, acceptance, the basic warmth every child deserved. Her mother, a single parent working double shifts at the diner, couldn't afford a new one. Emma had walked home that day, shivering, her thin frame swallowed by the icy air, vowing she'd never feel that small again. By the time she was 28, Emma had built a life far from the small-minded whispers of Willow Creek. She lived in Pittsburgh now, running a small but thriving carpentry business, her hands calloused from years of shaping wood into furniture that told stories of resilience. Her auburn hair was cropped short, her green eyes sharp with a guarded intensity. She'd learned to carry herself with a quiet strength, but the scars of her childhood lingered. She'd also come to understand why that woman at the coat drive had looked at her with such disdain. Emma was different not just in the tomboyish way she dressed, but in who she was. She was a lesbian, a truth she'd embraced in her teens, though it had come with its own battles. Emma's life was steady, solitary, until Lily Chun walked into her workshop one November afternoon. Lily was 30, with long black hair and warm brown eyes that seemed to see right through Emma's walls. She was a social worker, new to Pittsburgh, and she'd come to commission a custom bench for the community center where she worked. Her voice was soft but firm, her presence like a hearth fire in a storm. "I want something sturdy," Lily said, her fingers tracing the grain of a walnut slab. "Something that says, you're safe here." Emma felt a spark she hadn't known in years. She nodded, her throat tight, and got to work. Over the next few weeks, Lily's visits became more frequent. She'd bring coffee, linger to talk about the kids at the center, or share stories of her own childhood in a tight-knit Chinese-American family. Emma found herself opening up, bit by bit, about Willow Creek, the coat drive, the sting of rejection. Lily listened, her eyes never leaving Emma's, her silence a kind of permission to be seen. Their connection grew quietly, like snow piling up overnight. One evening, as they sanded the bench together in the workshop, their hands brushed and Emma froze. Lily didn't pull away. Instead, she smiled, her touch lingering just long enough to say what words couldn't. It was the beginning of something neither of them had expected, a tentative, beautiful dance of trust and vulnerability. But Willow Creek wasn't done with Emma. A letter arrived from her mother, still living in that small town, pleading for help. The church's coat drive, a lifeline for the poorest families, was at risk of shutting down. The organizer had passed away, and no one else had stepped up. The town was struggling, unemployment had spiked, and winter was coming fast. Emma's first instinct was to crumple the letter and move on. Why should she care about a place that had rejected her? But Lily, sitting across from her at a diner, reached for her hand. "You don't owe them anything," she said softly. "But maybe you owe yourself the chance to rewrite that story." Emma didn't answer right away. The idea of returning to Willow Creek felt like walking into a lion's den. But Lily's words stirred something deep, a flicker of purpose, a chance to prove she was more than the girl they'd turned away. She looked into Lily's eyes and saw not just compassion but belief. Maybe, just maybe, she could face her past and build something new. The next week, Emma packed her truck with tools, wood, and a heart full of resolve. Lily insisted on coming along, her presence a steady anchor. As they drove toward Willow Creek, the snow began to fall, blanketing the road in white. Emma's grip on the wheel tightened, her mind racing with memories of cold winters and colder words. But Lily's hand rested lightly on her knee, a reminder that she wasn't alone anymore. When they arrived, the town looked smaller than Emma remembered, its main street lined with faded storefronts and tired faces. The church basement, where the coat drive had always been held, was a mess, boxes of old coats, mismatched gloves, and a handful of volunteers who looked overwhelmed. Emma's mother, Linda, greeted her with a tearful hug, whispering, "I knew you'd come." Emma stiffened but didn't pull away. She wasn't here for forgiveness, she was here to do something bigger. Lily jumped in immediately, organizing the volunteers with a quiet efficiency that made Emma's chest ache with pride. They spent the first day sorting donations, but it was clear the supply wouldn't be enough. Families were already lining up outside, their faces etched with desperation. Emma overheard a mother whispering to her son, "It'll be okay, we'll make do," and the memory of her own childhood hit like a punch. She couldn't let history repeat itself. That night, in a cramped motel room, Emma couldn't sleep. She sat up, sketching plans by lamplight. Lily stirred, her voice sleepy but warm. "What's going on in that head of yours?" Emma hesitated, then showed her the sketches, shelves, racks, a whole system to organize and expand the coat drive. But it wasn't enough. She wanted to do more, to give these families not just coats, but warmth, hope, a sense of belonging. Lily's eyes lit up. "Let's make it happen," she said, and Emma felt her heart crack open just a little more. By morning, Emma was on the phone, calling in favors from suppliers in Pittsburgh. She secured donations of fabric, thread, and even a few sewing machines. Lily rallied the community center's network, pulling in volunteers from neighboring towns. Together, they turned the church basement into a hive of activity. Emma built sturdy racks, her hammer echoing with purpose, while Lily taught kids to sew simple scarves, their laughter filling the air. For the first time, Emma felt like she belonged in Willow Creek, not as the girl who'd been rejected, but as someone who could change things. The church basement buzzed with energy, but Emma's past lingered like a shadow. As she hammered nails into a new clothing rack, she caught glimpses of faces from her childhood neighbors who'd once turned their backs, now sorting gloves with hesitant smiles. She wanted to believe they'd changed, but trust was a hard-won thing, and Emma wasn't ready to give it freely. Lily, though, moved through the room like a force of nature, her warmth disarming even the most guarded volunteers. She knelt beside a shy teenager, showing her how to thread a needle, and Emma couldn't help but watch. Lily's patience, her ability to see the good in everyone, was a kind of magic Emma hadn't known she needed. When their eyes met across the room, Lily's smile was a lifeline, pulling Emma back from the edge of her doubts. By the end of the second day, the coat drive was taking shape, but the donations were still too few. Emma overheard a volunteer muttering about wasting time on people who don't deserve it, and her blood boiled. She remembered that tone, that judgment. It was the same one that had sent her home coatless all those years ago. She wanted to confront the man, to demand an apology for every kid who'd ever felt unworthy, but Lily's gentle touch on her arm stopped her. "Let's show them what deserves looks like," Lily whispered, and Emma nodded, her anger shifting into determination. They decided to expand the drive beyond coats. Emma sketched plans for a winter warmth hub, a place where families could find not just clothing, but blankets, hats, and hot meals. She called a contact at a Pittsburgh textile factory, negotiating a donation of surplus wool. Lily reached out to local restaurants, convincing them to donate soup and bread. The community center in Pittsburgh sent a van full of supplies, and suddenly, the church basement felt less like a relic of Emma's pain, and more like a beacon of possibility. But not everyone was on board. At a town meeting to discuss the project, a man named Carl, a grizzled hardware store owner with a permanent scowl, stood up. "Why are we doing all this for them?" he demanded, his voice dripping with contempt. "Half these families don't even try to work." Emma's fists clenched, but before she could speak, Lily stepped forward. "Everyone deserves warmth," she said, her voice steady but fierce. "If you've never gone to bed cold, you wouldn't understand." The room fell silent, and even Carl sat down, his face unreadable. That night, Emma and Lily sat on the church steps, sharing a thermos of coffee under a starlit sky. The air was crisp, the snow crunching under their boots. "You were incredible in there," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lily shrugged, her breath forming clouds in the cold. "I just said what I believe." Emma wanted to say more, to tell Lily how her courage made her feel alive, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she reached for Lily's hand, their fingers intertwining, and for a moment the world felt right. The next morning, Emma woke to a problem. The church's heating system, already ancient, had given out entirely. Volunteers shivered as they worked, and the families waiting outside looked increasingly desperate. Emma's mother, Linda, pulled her aside. "We can't keep going like this," she said, her voice trembling. People are losing hope. Emma felt the weight of her childhood pressing down again, the cold, the rejection, the fear that nothing would ever change. But then she saw Lily, bundled in her coat, laughing with a group of kids as they stitched mismatched fabric into blankets. And she knew she couldn't give up. Emma called a mechanic friend from Pittsburgh, who drove out to assess the heater. It was beyond repair, but he offered to donate a portable heating unit if Emma could cover the transport. She didn't have the money, but she had an idea. She posted a plea on social media, tagging every contact she had. Within hours, donations poured in, not just money, but more coats, scarves, even a generator from a nearby hardware chain. Lily's network amplified the post, and soon, people from across the state were offering help. Emma realized this wasn't just about Willow Creek Anna Maria, it was about showing what a community could do when it chose compassion over judgment. By the end of the week, the Winter Warmth Hub was coming together. The church basement was packed with donations, and volunteers were working in shifts. Emma and Lily barely had time to talk, but their stolen glances and brief touches said enough. One evening, as they sorted blankets, Lily leaned in close, her voice soft. "You're changing this place, Emma. You're changing me." Emma's heart raced, but before she could respond, a shout interrupted them. A volunteer had found a box of old coats in the church attic, some still tagged from years ago. Emma's breath caught as she recognized Oni's small, tattered jacket, the one she'd worn as a child. The pain of that day flooded back, but so did her resolve. She held the coat, her hands trembling, and looked at Lily. "This is why we're doing this," she said. "So no one else feels like I did." Lily's eyes shone with tears, and she pulled Emma into a hug, their warmth a shield against the cold of the past. They stood there, surrounded by the hum of volunteers and the promise of a better tomorrow, knowing they were building something that mattered. The Winter Warmth Hub was alive, but Emma felt the weight of eyes on her. Some in Willow Creek had warmed to the project, but others whispered, their gazes sharp with suspicion. She overheard a woman at the general store mutter, "She's one of those girls, isn't she?" The word stung, dragging Emma back to the coat drive rejection, but she squared her shoulders and kept working. She wasn't that scared kid anymore. Lily noticed the tension in Emma's jaw and found her during a break, sitting alone on a stack of crates. "You okay?" she asked, her voice a soft anchor. Emma hesitated, then told her about the whispers, the looks, the way Willow Creek seemed determined to remind her she didn't belong. Lily listened, her hand resting lightly on Emma's knee. "They don't get to define you," she said. "You're doing something they can't ignore." Emma managed a small smile, but the doubt lingered. Could she really change a town that had never accepted her? The hub was now serving dozens of families daily, but the demand was relentless. Emma and Lily worked late into the night, organizing donations and planning a community event to distribute the supplies. They wanted it to be more than a Handuta celebration of unity, a chance to show Willow Creek what compassion looked like. Emma designed a wooden arch for the event, carving the words "Warmth for All" into the beam. Lily coordinated with local musicians and food vendors, her energy infectious. Together they were a force, but Emma couldn't shake the fear that it wouldn't be enough. Then came the setback. A local news outlet ran a story about the hub, but the comments online were vicious. "Why's an outsider like her running this?" one read. "Bet she's just here to push her lifestyle." Emma's stomach churned as she scrolled through the hate. She'd faced homophobia before, but seeing it tied to her work, the one thing she'd poured her heart into, felt like a betrayal. She slammed her laptop shut, her hands shaking. Lily found her pacing the church basement, her eyes red. "They don't know you," Lily said, pulling her close. "But I do. And I'm so proud of you." Emma let herself lean into Lily's embrace, the warmth of her arms a balm against the ugliness. "I just wanted to do something good," she whispered. Lily tilted her face up, her eyes fierce. "You are. And we're not stopping." It was the first time Emma felt truly seen, not just as the girl who'd been rejected, but as someone capable of rewriting her story. The next day they doubled down. Emma recruited a group of teens to paint the arch, turning it into a symbol of hope. Lily organized a workshop where families could make their own scarves, fostering a sense of ownership. The hub was becoming more than a charity, it was a community. Even Carl, the hardware store owner who'd scoffed at the project, showed up with a box of gloves, muttering, Figured you could use these. Emma nodded, her throat tight. It wasn't an apology, but it was a start. As the event day approached, Emma and Lily grew closer, their bond deepening in the quiet moments between the chaos. One night, as they hung fairy lights around the church, Lily laughed, her breath visible in the cold. You know, I never thought I'd find someone like you in a place like this. Emma's heart skipped. Someone like me? She teased, but her voice was soft. Lily's eyes softened too. Someone who makes me believe in second chances. They stood close, the world fading away, and Emma felt the courage to lean in, their lips brushing in a kiss that felt like a promise. But the morning of the event brought a crisis. A pipe burst in the church basement, flooding the floor where the supplies were stored. Volunteers scrambled to save what they could, but some coats and blankets were ruined. Emma's heart sank, promised these families warmth, and now she was failing them. Lily, ever steady, rallied the team. "We've got this," she said, her voice cutting through the panic. She called in favors from her network, securing emergency donations from Pittsburgh. Emma worked alongside her, moving soggy boxes, her resolve hardening. They wouldn't let this stop them. By afternoon, the community pulled together. Neighbors brought towels to mop up the water. Kids helped stack dry supplies, and even the woman from the general store showed up with a tray of cookies, her face sheepish. Emma realized something was shifting in Willow Creek, not just in the hub, but in the people. They were starting to see her, not as the girl they'd rejected, but as someone who cared. As the sun set, the event began. The arch glowed under the fairy lights and families gathered, their faces lit with hope. Emma stood beside Lily, their hands brushing, and felt a surge of pride. They'd built something real, something that could outlast the hate. But as the first family stepped forward to collect their coats, Emma noticed a familiar face in the crowd, the woman from the coat drive all those years ago, now older, her eyes tired. Emma's breath caught, and she wondered if this was her chance to finally confront the past. The woman's name was Margaret, and she stood at the edge of the crowd, clutching a threadbare shawl. Emma's heart pounded as memories flooded back, the sneer, the cold, the humiliation of being turned away. She wanted to walk away, to let the past stay buried, but Lily's voice echoed in her mind. You owe yourself the chance to rewrite that story. Emma took a deep breath and approached Margaret, her voice steady but laced with years of hurt. Do you remember me? She asked. Margaret's eyes narrowed, then widened with recognition. You're Linda's girl, she said, her voice brittle. The one who wanted a boy's coat. Emma's jaw tightened, but she held her ground. I was a kid who needed warmth, she said. And you made me feel like I didn't deserve it. The words hung in the air, raw and heavy. Margaret's face crumpled, and for a moment Emma thought she'd walk away. Instead, she whispered, I'm sorry. I was wrong. It wasn't enough to erase the pain, but it was something. Emma nodded, her throat tight, and handed Margaret a new coat from the pile. Everyone deserves warmth, she said, echoing Lily's words. Margaret took the coat, her hands trembling, and shuffled away. Emma felt a weight lift, not completely but enough to breathe a little easier. She turned to find Lily watching her, her eyes shining with pride. You're incredible, Lily said, squeezing her hand. Emma managed a shaky smile, feeling the first stirrings of closure. The event was a success. Families left with coats, blankets, and full stomachs, their laughter mingling with the music. Kids ran under the arch, their new scarves flapping like flags. Emma and Lily stood together, watching the scene unfold, their shoulders touching. It was a moment of triumph, but Emma knew the real work was just beginning. The hub needed to be sustainable, a lasting resource for Willow Creek, not just a one-time event. The next day, they met with the town council to propose making the Winter Warmth Hub a permanent fixture. Emma presented her plans, blueprints for a renovated community center, complete with storage, a kitchen, and a space for workshops. Lily outlined a funding strategy, tapping into grants and local businesses. The council was skeptical, especially Carl, who grumbled about costs. But when Linda stood up, her voice shaking but firm, and said, My daughter's giving this town more than it ever gave her, the room fell silent. The vote was unanimous, the hub would stay. Emma and Lily celebrated that night in their motel room, sharing a bottle of cheap wine and a pizza. The air was warm with possibility, and as they laughed over a story about Lily's disastrous first sewing lesson, Emma felt something shift. She set down her glass and looked at Lily, her heart racing. "You make me want to be better," she said, her voice raw. Lily's smile softened and she leaned in, their lips meeting in a kiss that felt like coming home. It was slow, tender, and full of promise, a moment that said they were in this together, no matter what came next. But challenges loomed. The online hate hadn't stopped, and now it targeted both Emma and Lily, calling them outsiders and worse. Emma wanted to ignore it, but Lily insisted they address it head-on. They organized a town hall, inviting everyone to share their concerns. The room was tense, with familiar faces from Emma's past mixed with new supporters. One man stood up, echoing Carl's earlier complaints about handouts. Lily responded with her usual grace, explaining how the hub empowered families, not just helped them. Emma added, "This isn't about charity, it's about community. We're stronger together." To her surprise, several people nodded, and by the end, even the skeptics seemed swayed. The hub grew stronger each day. Volunteers became regulars and families started contributing what they could. Some brought food. Others offered skills. Emma taught woodworking classes, watching kids who reminded her of herself discover their own strength. Lily ran counseling sessions, helping parents navigate tough times. They were building more than a hub, they were building trust, something Willow Creek hadn't had in years. One evening, as they locked up the church, Lily pulled Emma into a quiet corner. "I'm falling for you," she said, her voice steady but vulnerable. Emma's breath caught. She'd spent so long guarding her heart, afraid of being rejected again. But Lily's honesty broke through. "I'm falling for you too," she admitted, and they kissed under the snowy sky, their love a quiet rebellion against the town's old prejudices. As winter deepened, the hub became a lifeline. Emma and Lily worked tirelessly, their bond growing stronger with every challenge they faced. But a new threat emerged. A developer wanted to buy the church property, threatening to shut down the hub. Emma felt the old fear creeping back, the fear of losing something she'd fought for. But this time she wasn't alone. She looked at Lily, at the community they'd built, and knew they'd fight for it together. The developer's proposal hit Willow Creek like a blizzard. The church, a cornerstone of the town despite its flaws, was at risk of being turned into condos. Emma stood in the basement, staring at the racks she'd built, the blankets stitched by kids, the space that had become a symbol of hope. Losing it felt like losing a piece of herself. Lily was already strategizing, her laptop open to spreadsheets and legal documents. "We can fight this," she said, her voice fierce. "The community owns this church, not some outsider with a checkbook." Emma nodded, but doubt gnawed at her. Willow Creek had never been good at standing up for itself. Would they rally for the hub, for her? Lily seemed to sense her fear. She reached across the table, her hand warm against Emma's. "We've got this," she said, and Emma believed her. They organized a campaign to save the church, rallying volunteers and families who'd benefited from the hub. Emma spoke at town meetings, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "This place isn't just a building," she said, standing under the warmth for all arch. "It's proof we can take care of each other." Lily followed, presenting a petition with hundreds of signatures. Even Carl, the gruff hardware store owner, spoke up, admitting the hub had changed his mind about what community meant. The council agreed to delay the sale, giving them time to raise funds. Emma and Lily threw themselves into fundraising. They hosted a winter festival, complete with music, food, and a coat drive that doubled as a celebration. Families donated what they could, and businesses from Pittsburgh sent checks. Emma built a stage for local kids to perform, their voices ringing out in the cold air. Lily danced with them, her laughter infectious, and Emma couldn't take her eyes off her. In that moment, surrounded by the community they built, Emma knew she was in love not just with Lily, but with the life they were creating. The online hate persisted, but it was drowned out by support. A viral video of the festival, showing kids handing out scarves and families hugging under the arch, spread across social media. Donations poured in, enough to make a serious offer to buy the church. Emma and Lily presented the funds to the council, their hands clasped under the table. When the vote came through to keep the church, the room erupted in cheers. Emma pulled Lily close, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "We did it." The hub became a permanent fixture, renamed the Willow Creek Warmth Center. Emma and Lily moved to town permanently, sharing a small house near the church. They ran the center together, turning it into a year-round resource for education, support, and community. Emma's carpentry classes grew, and Lily started a mentorship program for teens, many of whom reminded Emma of her younger self, outsiders looking for a place to belong. One snowy evening, as they locked up the center, Emma stopped Lily under the arch. The fairy lights glowed, casting a soft warmth over them. "I never thought I'd come back here," Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. "But you made me believe I could change things." Lily's eyes softened, and she reached for Emma's hand. "You didn't just change Willow Creek," she said. "You changed me." They kissed, the snow falling around them, and Emma felt the last pieces of her past fall away. Years later, the center was a beacon for the region. Families came from miles away, and the story of the Winter Warmth Hub inspired other towns to start their own. Emma and Lily, now married, stood at the heart of it all, their love a quiet revolution. The coat drive, once a source of pain, became a symbol of redemption. Every winter, Emma would see a kid in a new coat, their face lit with pride, and she'd remember the girl she'd been. She'd squeeze Lily's hand, knowing they'd given more than warmth, they'd given a town, and each other, a second chance. The meaning of their work went beyond Willow Creek. It was about proving that love in all its forms could heal. Emma had been rejected for a coat, for being different, but she'd grown up to give warmth to an entire community. And in Lily, she'd found a partner who saw her, scars and all, and loved her fiercely. Together they'd shown that even the coldest places could thaw, that even the deepest wounds could mend, and that every person deserved to feel warm, seen, and home.